Hello everyone and welcome to this video. Now today I'm going to be doing an album review. I'm going to be taking a look at this record here today, which is the new album by the Lathums. So yeah, I'll just be doing my usual thing in this video, giving you a background information about the album, then showing you my vinyl copy of it here, and then going over each of the album's tracks in detail. So this is the third album by Wigan's finest four-piece, and yeah, the Lathums are a great band who I've been a fan of probably since their first album came out, or shortly after it came out. And yeah, I said this is their third album, it's just being released. So this is their first album to feature their new, and I guess I use new in inverted commas there, the new bass player, Matty Murphy, on their album. Their original bass player, a guy called Johnny Cunliffe, left the band at some point in 2022 for reasons unknown. It was kind of during the making of their second album, and I believe he Johnny appears on all the tracks on their second album, but kind of vanished a little bit. I don't think anyone really knows exactly why he left. So this is the first album to feature the kind of new revised lineup, and they've really I guess on this record and got to the point on this record kind of settled into playing through through a lot of live performances. So another change with the Lathums that occurred was a change in record label. So they parted ways with Island Records, which is a pretty major label. You signed them after their first couple of singles, and I'm really not sure who dropped who in that sort of relationship, because I mean, both their previous albums have been commercially successful, very commercially successful, in fact, both #1 albums, and their gigs were getting bigger and bigger, but instead for this album, they changed to a indie label called Modern Sky Records, which is, like I said, a small indie label based in the north of England. So I do wonder maybe they're maybe afforded greater creative control, perhaps, on Modern Sky. Now, this album also has a notable producer on it as well, a guy called John Kettle, as a producer. Now, he's not a household name, but he was their music teacher at college, which is quite significant because they were essentially brought together during their time at college, although they worked with two different producers for their first two albums, I think it's good that they kind of are returning to working with John Kettle here. It really gives it a kind of full circle kind of approach, and kind of feels like a real return to their roots. Now, they said with the making of this album that they were afforded greater time to kind of record and perfect the album, so that was also maybe perhaps a reason for them switching labels. So they spent basically with this album a lot of time rehearsing the songs and getting the arrangements sorted out, and essentially when it came to recording the album proper, they essentially just did it live. They had these arrangements under their fingertips already, whereas they say that previous albums were more kind of rushed, so a lot of overdubs and kind of piecing things together. Here they were afforded the time to play through the songs properly, get to know them properly, and then record them quite spontaneously kind of thing. Now, it does remain to be seen whether this album will get to #1. I am filming this on the Tuesday, so we might actually have the week, the midweek chart update already. I think it's in a bit of a chart battle with Mancunian band Doves. They get a slightly older band, but they've got a new album out as well. I thought that the main competition would actually be Sam Fender, who's had, I think, the biggest opening week for an album since Harry Styles, I want to say. So I thought that it'd be Sam Fender they were competing with, but it's actually Doves. So yeah, hopefully the Lathums can get a third #1 album here, because I definitely think that they deserve it. So anyway, I will now show you my vinyl copy of the album here. So this is quite a special copy that I'm actually very glad in hindsight that I got. Now this is called the Dinked edition here, but basically yeah, it's a kind of it's pressed on a blue vinyl, and you get a few extra goodies in with it as well. So overall, the artwork, I can't quite make my mind up with this artwork, whether I like it or not. I like the colours and the vibrancy of it, but it just doesn't quite fit in with their other albums. I don't think, you know, it just doesn't, like, I think the fact it doesn't have like the name on it like anywhere, like aside from like the sticker, I don't know, and I just think that other albums, the other two albums, have a bit more personality, like with like their covers, I think. But I do like the colours and the vibrancy of this. Here's the back cover, which I actually think like is a much better photo. Actually, you got them kind of like looking up through this sort of stairwell. I actually quite like that back cover. But what you get with this Dinked edition, though, is the usual kind of like inner sleeve here, which just has the lyrics there, and then another nice photo here, and some credits there. And this is on a lovely blue vinyl here. So yeah, that's the record there. But with this particular version, you also get a lovely signed print here as well, which is really nice. I think this is the first signed thing I have from the Lathums. So yeah, I'm quite happy to have this here. But then you also with this get a bonus 7-inch single here as well, just that same cover from the art print there. And this has got two songs on it called Love of My Life, which is quite a nice like acoustic piece. It's a pretty good song, and then a track called Gull in the Wind, which I remember really liking like when I played this. So I've only played this one like the once because I've been more trying to get to know the album. But it's good that they've thrown this like little bonus 7-inch in here as well. So overall, the vinyl is really nicely packaged, I think. So anyway, I want to now go over each of the album's tracks in detail. I'll score each song out of 10, and then use those scores to give us a overall percentage marking for the album. So the record kicks off with the track Leave No Stone Unturned. Now this is quite an interesting sort of to kick off the album, because it is quite laid back, like, you know, it's very much like sort of like musically quite restrained, I think. It kind of lyrically sort of tells a tale of kind of like oppression and pain, and how the kind of character like in like the song should leave leave no stone unturned like in order to get sort of like justice. It's got a kind of like I said, quite a laid back kind of almost swingy kind of feel to it, and Moore's vocals sounds it's definitely got some kind of like effects on it which make it sound like quite like sort of like it's come from like the 1950s, I think, like on it. I do like the song. It is definitely growing on me, but it just doesn't. I'm maybe not quite sure of it like as an album opener though. And I also another wee gripe with it is the bridge section, which just sounds like he's kind of rhyming for rhyming sakes, like on it. But I do quite like the final chorus where you get these like overlapping vocal parts. I think it's like because like if you have it, you can get it. If you need it, you can want it, sort of thing. And it's kind of counteracting like the main melody. I really like that. I think that's really clever. But the bridge, I'm just not crazy about. So Leave No Stone Unturned though, pretty good chat to kick off the album, an 8 out of 10. Okay, the next song up on the album is called Reflections of Lessons Left. Now this is another solid song with, again, quite sort of like philosophical lyrics on it. Again, Moore has said that this song is about the importance of treating others with kindness and respect, regardless of superficial differences. So it includes lyrics such as like, "'Cause we're all the same, we breathe and complain." And again, musically it's quite laid back. It's quite a restrained and like performance like on it. But again, I think it's got some really tasteful guitar work on it. I think the chorus is quite memorable, kind of once you get to know the song, like once you've heard it like a few times. So I think it's another very, very, very good track on the album. Okay, and then the third track up is called Stellar Cast. Now this was one of the singles. I think this was the second single from the album. And I have to say, I didn't really like it when it came out, and I still don't really like it now, like on the album. It's got a bit of a kind of ska feel to its kind of rhythm and kind of like musical arrangement, albeit with a kind of harder musical sort of edge like to it. Just for me feels a bit like a redo of one of their early tracks called I See Your Ghost, which has got a very similar feel to it, and I think is a vastly superior song. Like it's much more memorable, like I See Your Ghost. The lyrics on this are inspired by a dream that Alex Moore had after getting a bit too drunk at like one of like their concerts, like early concerts. He sort of talks about like drinking like some Jamaican ale and sort of seeing this kind of like otherworldly figure sort of like coming towards him like in like this dream, and sort of like being like sort of like intrigued by it. I mean, to me, the lyrics just don't really grab me like on this one here. And another gripe with it is Scott Conception's guitar sound like on this track. The solo, like in particular, is just like he's sort of taken the overdrive and kind of like the distortion and basically just maxed it out, and it just sounds terrible. I think I really don't like the guitar sound like on this song at all. So yeah, I mean, I'm giving it a 6 out of 10, maybe a bit generous, but I do like, again, I wouldn't necessarily skip the track like on when I listen through the full album, but it's not a song that I would ever pick out, and I do think it was a poor choice like for a single. Now, the next track up on the album is Heartbreaker. Now, this is where the album really gets going for me. This was the 4th single from the album, and I think should have been the lead-off single, and I think should have opened the album like as well, because this is a brilliant song. It's a kind of old-time kind of rock and roll kind of like influence like track, this one here, but it's also got just a great pop arrangement on it as well. Some excellent backing vocals. You've got this kind of sort of not quite like a football chant like on it, but you've got like these great la 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 kind of vocals going through it, and again some great lyrics on it, where there's this great line like, "We have more in common than we sometimes think," like, so like really sticks out. Mora said like on this, like with this song, like he wanted to write a more deliberately upbeat and kind of like sort of like track with a kind of sense of confidence like about it, and he said that this was a departure from his usual style, and I must say I do wish that this was his usual style, because it is so good, and to me it is the best Lathums song they've done in many years, certainly since like some of the great tracks like that appeared like on like their first album. It's you. Okay, next track up on the album is called Dynamite. Now, the upbeat kind of pace continues like with like this track here. Great kind of a great like sort of like 4 to the floor beat, quite Northern Soul sort of sounding this one here, with lyrics that sort of like explore like the difficulties like of navigating like a relationship, and how love can kind of be a bit like dynamite and sort of like explode like at any time, and sort of like sort of like resulting, I guess, like unexpected like events like sort of thing. Again, some great like sort of like I really like the chorus. I think that really soars like quite well, and was a track that they originally had. I mean, some of these songs that go back like quite a few years. Like this is a song I think they had since like their second album, so it's not quite a leftover. But it's a track that I think they kept coming back to and like wanted to really work on, and it's definitely like a grower like of like a song for me, Dynamite. So yeah, that one will get a 9 out of 10. Okay, the next track up on the album, which closes off side 1, is called Unrequited Love. Now, this is a really nice tender ballad. I think we definitely need like this, like at this point, like on the album, like after like 3 really upbeat, like quite intense songs. So Unrequited Love is a really nice ballad. It's essentially kind of paints, I think there's a lot like Moore says, like a lot of his songs are quite kind of fictional, like kind of like songs, but perhaps also like informed by like his own experiences, like as well. So it's about a kind of guy like who's sort of like down and out, like on like his luck. He's in like a coffee shop, like alone. I think he's maybe been stood up like on like a date, like possibly, and it's just kind of watching these people going about like their daily business sort of thing. And it's got a great lyric, I guess, about sort of not judging people like, or like judging like a sort of like a book like by its cover kind of thing, or people buy or like people buy like their appearance. He says like, although he doesn't look like much, when you scratch the surface, paint comes off. Colours that were bright but no longer see the light. I think it's a lovely lyric, and again musically it's it builds really well, this song. It starts off very restrained, but by the end you've got a great string arrangement on it, and again like an epic guitar solo like from like Scott Conception, and then Moore's vocal gets more passionate and powerful like as like the track goes on. That I'm Not Shaking Baby kind of motif is really effective, actually quite catchy, and like quite like a kind of like an instant hook like on the album, I think. So no, like Unrequited Love, a really good ballad there, a 9 out of 10. Okay, and then side 2 opens up with what was the lead single from the album, which is the track No Direction. Now this for me is possibly my least favourite on the album, actually. I think they did a very poor selection of singles from this album, like in my opinion. I mean, this song is very punky, it's a good rocking performance, but I just don't like the lyrics on it. I think, like, I must confess, I did mishear the lyrics to the chorus, where I just thought they were singing "there's no direction, da da da," but they're actually singing like "there's no direction, but up." But listen again, he's definitely adding in like an extra syllable. He's definitely not singing "but up." You know, it just sounds like he's just doing some kind of vocalization after it. So yeah, to me, I don't think is a great performance overall. Like, kind of like vocally and kind of like lyrics are just not great, like on like this track. But again, it's a good performance in terms of the band. It's immediate. It's a kind of burst of energy, like on like the album. And again, I would say with Moore's vocal, like, he's a great singer, but I do think his vocals are definitely better suited to the ballads and the more mid-tempo tracks. Like, when he tries to rock out, he's still good, but he's definitely not one of the better rock singers out there. He's definitely more suited to the kind of like slower and like slightly more like melodic tracks. Okay, next song up on the album is called Until Our Bitter End. Now, this one is slightly, quite a jaunty like little number here. Essentially, lyrics sort of appear to be about the kind of working class struggle and about how a kind of, I guess, like, you know, like, you don't need possessions and that, like, if like you've got a kind of like a loving sort of like relationship like on it. He sings like, "I've saved up all my notes, sold the car to keep afloat, soon we will be grown and fit into these clothes," he sings like on it. It's a kind of, like, Us Against the World like sort of like song. I mean, it maybe gives the vibe a little bit of album filler. It's definitely not a track that is that particularly stands out to me, but it's a good song though. It's a fun track, and yeah, I would give that one a 7 out of 10. They're knocking at your door, won't take no for an answer. Okay, next song up on the album is called Knocking at Your Door. Now, this is probably the Lathums' most political song like up to this point. They've not really, I'm just trying to think back to like early singles or like other tracks like from their albums, but I don't think they've ever really got like kind of like sort of like too political, like in like a similar way to say someone like Sam Fender perhaps like is but this is a song that Moore says essentially is about how ordinary people can be sort of taken advantage of by those in power. It talks about sort of like like vultures like knocking at people's doors and sort of taking away possessions, sort of like bailiffs or like debt collectors kind of thing. And it's definitely got a kind of defiance to it, this track. It kind of changes tempo like halfway through, which I think is really effective, and it kind of keeps like the track like quite interesting and feeling like it's always like moving like along. It reminds me quite a bit of, there's a Paul Heaton song called Heatongrad, which has got a similar kind of vibe to it, particularly like the second half like of it, where it is, again, it's quite a political, quite like an angry song, but then the kind of like the gear shift like halfway through is the kind of like, it's like the uprising sort of like beginning kind of thing. So I think like it's quite like effective. But again, it's got an interesting production on it, some interesting, I think there's strings on this track, or like if like they're not strings, they're certainly like synthesizer strings. And it's a good track. It's definitely one that's growing on me. The more like that I hear it. I think I originally had this down like as a 7 out of 10, but bumped this one up to an 8 because I do rather like it now. You are perfect. Okay, next song up is The Jester. Now, this is another real favourite of mine, like on the album, like I have to say. I think it's got a great kind of like guitar riff to it, a great kind of propulsive kind of like beat like to it as well, and really like Matty Murphy's bass line on this track really stands out. Lyrically, the track is more of a kind of, again, one of Moore's sort of like narrative, like sort of bass tracks about this kind of jester character who kind of acts like all happy, like and jovial, but deep down has sort of like slightly more, sadder, like more like melancholic like feelings, like on it, like so he sings like, underneath his painted face is a heart that truly bleeds. For though this wretch of a being brings blithe, there's a sadness in his eyes, like goes like the chorus. So yeah, like Alex has described this as a wacky, wordy song, but I think kind of harks back to like some of like their early work, like certainly stuff like Fight On and like I See Your Ghost, like quite wordy, quite literate like kind of songs, which I think like works like really well, and like is definitely one of the things that made like the Lathums quite unique, like unique like with like their first album. And again, I just really like this track. Again, like the chorus has just got some great backing vocals on it, a more kind of spacey production on it that I really like with this track. So yeah, no, The Jester, another very good song. We'll get a 9 out of 10. 'Cause I talk and I talk and I talk and I Okay, and then the penultimate track on the album is called Surrounded by Beauty. Now, this is another track, probably along with Heartbreaker, that is one of my contenders for my favourite on the album. This is just a great track. To me, it's a real amalgamation of a lot of influences like on this track. It kind of starts off quite kind of 50s influence, a bit of kind of like, I guess I hear a bit like Roy Orbison kind of sort of feel to it, kind of grand sort of, not quite a ballad, but certainly it's got that kind of like this sort of like this big song like sort of like feel to it, but then goes in a more kind of what I think is, it sounds a bit more kind of Stone Roses kind of flavour to like the chorus. Reminds me a bit of their song like How Do You Sleep, with these kind of like quite close harmony vocals like on it, and then you've then got a trumpet solo. It just feels like everything they threw at this song really worked, and like really like all the ingredients pulled together like on this track to make a really interesting song. Lyrically, it talks about kind of selfishness and kind of always sort of thinking and kind of talking like about like yourself, even like and like sort of like worrying about yourself, like even though you are like as like the song says, like surrounded by beauty, like you think that you're cursed, like goes like the chorus. I have read some reviews of this album describing this track as filler and like as one of the more kind of throwaway tracks like on the album, but I absolutely disagree. I think this is, yeah, like I said, like a contender for the best track like on the album, and I really hope like they do it live because it is a fantastic song, this. So yeah, Surrounded by Beauty, a 10 out of 10. Okay, and then the album finishes with the track Long Shadows. Now, this was another one of the singles from the album, and this is a very emotionally intense song to finish the album. Now, the vocals on this were apparently recorded like in like a single take, and you can really hear the despair, the pain, like in like Alex Moore's vocal like on it, to the point that by the end of the track, it's almost uncomfortable, unsettling to listen to. It feels like, you know, this is a guy who's like going through a lot, been through a lot, and is really letting it all out like in like this like sort of like vocal performance. And the lyrics are just so full of like this despair. Like he sings like, cast my soul into the depths of oblivion, leave me in strife, constrain the knife, he sings like on it. But it's essentially just a kind of, yeah, like all like these lyrics, they kind of pull together, and essentially just a kind of, they're all kind of like 3 or 4 word phrases which just don't necessarily hold together for me. And I think this is probably like my most controversial ranking like on the album, because most reviews of this have kind of signaled this out like as a Lathums masterpiece, like one of like their very best songs. But to me, I just can't see myself returning to this song like all that often. I just think it is a very tough listening. Like it might really come alive like when like you hear like them do this track live. But yeah, like at the time being, like I'm giving it like a 7 out of 10 like as a closer on the album. We'll focus slow. Okay, so overall, this album would score 82%. So I think this is another very good album here by the Lathums. Now, I must say, like, I mean, I can't lie, I was a bit underwhelmed, like, on first listen, like, on the album, but I do think there are some real growers, like, on this album, like, no doubt. Tracks like Dynamite, Unrequited Love, Knocking at Your Door, they're not immediate songs that you love, but, like, when you listen to them, like, a few times, like, you really, like, get into them. It's also got a couple, like, off, like, their very best, like, Latham songs, like, if I was to do, like, a top 10 list, like, of, like, their whole discography, tracks like Heartbreaker and Surrounded by Beauty would definitely feature or be like in very close contention for like my top 10 list. But I would say this is possibly still their weakest album though. I think but that's probably is more a reflection of how good the first 2 albums were, like certainly compared to like certainly like not saying that this is like a bad album. I think what lets it down though is the 3 singles, like so Stellar Cast, No Direction and Long Shadows, I think are the 3 weakest tracks like on here, like if I can be honest. So it's the fact that those were the singles and are the tracks that you would, I guess, immediately think of with this album, because they'll be the songs that they will play live, you know, like from the album, like sort of like probably from now until like the dawn of time. And like I just don't think like strong choices like for singles really. But no, like as I said though, like another very strong record here though from the Lathums. So yeah, like if like you've not heard it, definitely go and check it out. So yes, I hope you have enjoyed my review of it, and yep, I'll see you all next time for the next video. Goodbye.